So I've just watched this episode of Face Off that you can see on screen, of course, the Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois episode. I sometimes do reviews of these little pre-event shows to let you guys know if they're any good or if there's anything I think is of significance. Usually there isn't. Usually they're not very good because it's the same formulaic trash talk. Oh, you'll see on the night. Oh, yeah, I don't have to say anymore because you'll find out. Like, you know how boxing trash talk is just, it's a bit dead sometimes unless someone's really charismatic and creative with their trash talk. And to be fair, Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois, they're not that. They're not good talkers. They're not the most charismatic guys. Anthony Joshua historically has been a little bit cringe with his trash talk. Daniel Dubois, not much better, but you kind of let him off because he's a bit simple. But I have to say, this episode, I did find it mildly entertaining. It's about 17 and a half minutes long, and it didn't feel like a drag at all. I watched all of it in one go, and it just went by like that. And the entire time, I just had like this kind of sly smirk on my face because some of the digs that were going back and forth were, they were a bit entertaining. Without really getting into the ins and outs of what was said, although I will touch on a couple of things, it kind of started off like, okay, AJ looks very serious. He has this very cold, business-like expression on his face these days. And I've got to say, Hatman, I think he was on the money the other day when he said that he suspects AJ is a bit bitter towards boxing. And I agree. I think AJ, he's obviously like a veteran at this point. Like, he's been there, seen it, and done it. And I think, he had a little bit of a fall from grace, which, it's really comes with the territory. When you're as ambitious as AJ is, because people make out like AJ's some manufactured champion, that's such bollocks. He isn't. Like, I've had my criticisms of AJ like every other fighter, but AJ has been one of the more ambitious fighters in recent years. And when you're ambitious, you lose. Like, so what? When you consistently fight the best, you lose. Like, just get over it. But I think AJ, he's seen how fickle the kind of boxing sphere is. From the fans, from the pundits, he's seen how fickle they can be. So whereas now, I think he's less of a people's champion and he's a bit more of a selfish champion. I get the vibe that he really just cares about getting paid the amount he deserves, or he thinks he deserves, and getting better as like an operator, as a boxer. But I don't think he really cares much for the culture and, entertaining people and giving back. I don't think he really cares so much about that these days. And I can't blame him, to be fair, because, as I say, when you see how fickle some people are towards Joshua, that's bound to kind of get your back up. But it seemed to kick off with AJ with this very stern demeanour, and it seemed like Dubois and Frank Warren are going to be like trying to push his buttons and prod him and probe him and that kind of thing. But then as the episode started to unfold, I got to say, I think AJ and Eddie Hearn, I think they played some real blinders, and they kind of, I don't know, like, I don't want to say they were unsettled, Dubois and Frank Warren, but I think they definitely got them a bit flustered because they started to make like small comments and just cutting in to say their piece and disagree, and it was all respectful, but there was like some kind of underhand comments and underhand tones to what they were saying. And I want to say about 2/3 of the way through the episode, it did seem like, okay, Frank Warren and Daniel Dubois, they're kind of getting a little bit irritated now. And, Frank Warren, he can be very sensitive. Like, you only have to say a certain thing that he disagrees with, and all of a sudden the shoulders roll in and, he starts touching the dent in his forehead. And then Daniel Dubois he was kind of like shaking his head. Oh, I'm too tired for this. I don't want to speak anymore. I've just come off the plane from Brazil. And then on that, Anthony Joshua was like, okay, yeah, what are you doing in Brazil? And, oh, training. And Frank was like, oh, yeah, he's just like you. He's always in the gym. He's always training. But I believe Daniel Dubois' new girlfriend that he's very fond of, I believe she's Brazilian. So, he's most likely out in Brazil doing some bedroom training, some horizontal cardio, whatever. And so it was just, I got to say, it was kind of amusing to see Eddie Hearn and AJ. And bear in mind, like, I don't think AJ is a particularly good trash talker, but wasn't really trash talking. He was just kind of poking back. Oh yeah, what about this? What about? Oh, you said this before. Why are you going back on your word? Blah blah. Because like he brought up when Frank Warren criticised AJ for jumping trainers, but then Ade asked Daniel Dubois about, oh, things are going really well since you brought Don Charles in, but then AJ interjected, and then Eddie Hearn jumped in and was like, well, technically Daniel Dubois has got 3 trainers because he's got Don Charles, he's got some guy called Kieran, I don't know who that is, and then he's got his dad. And it was just, I sound like I'm really gossiping, I sound like a schoolgirl, like, oh, this happened, oh, this person said that, but just watch it for yourself. Overall, I just think that, as I say, Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn, I think they did a good job of just getting under their skin a little bit, and it was all very cheeky. It was all very like, smirking. There were a couple of moments where Eddie Hearn and Joshua were whispering some stuff to each other. So I think they knew full well what they were doing. And I think it's all part of a psychological kind of tactic to really lean on that big brother, little brother dynamic, because there is a little bit of that at play. Daniel Dubois is his own man. Like he's 26 years old, I believe. He is starting to gain some experience, so he's not a baby anymore. But compared to Joshua, someone who's got way more experience than him as an amateur and a pro, that experience can really tell. And I certainly think that AJ's experience will tell in this fight. He's had the big wins on the big stage. He's had the lows. He's had the crisis moments. With Daniel Dubois, he's had a few of those, but he just isn't as experienced, and he hasn't got the reps in. Not as many reps as Joshua. As I say, Joshua by this point, he's really kind of a veteran. Like, what is there left for him to do? If you want to look at achievements, the only thing he hasn't done is become undisputed, really. And he's fought a whole host of different styles in different places, all that kind of stuff, big events. So I think, they're trying to lean into that dynamic of big brother, little brother, trying to reinforce and say, like, Daniel, don't get it twisted, you're still very much in my shadow. And I think that can go one of two ways. Excuse me, if we look at, and I say that because we're not going to know if this is of any significance until the night. And really, like, it could be insignificant or it could be a major factor. But if we look at Daniel Dubois' mentality, he has this very simple, childlike mind. And I think that can work. It can be a defining factor. It can go of one of two ways. If he has this naive, young, childish mind, he might be more prone to that dynamic and kind of falling foul of, okay, I am in AJ's shadow. How am I going to do this? This guy, he's just too big. He's older than me. He's bigger than me. He's faster than me. He's like, when you're really young and you can't overpower your older brother, you're 9, 10, whatever, but he's in his teens. So there's just no way that you can get a hold on him. Not yet, anyway. Will Dubois' psyche, will he subject him to that? Or I think there is a plus side for Daniel Dubois where he does have this simple mindset and this childish mindset, and therefore he doesn't overthink. And maybe it's just going to be water off a duck's back. Because we've seen, or at least I think I've observed with Deontay Wilder, he was, not so much now because I think Wilder is well and truly like spent. I think he's faded. I think he's washed. But for a while, I think Wilder, where he was so simple, and where, he just didn't think, like, he's a bit of an idiot. Not a bit, he is an idiot, like, just plain and simple. It was kind of what kept him afloat for a while, because he was basically able to delude himself. Whereas thinkers, like deep thinkers, they second guess, they doubt, they're constantly overanalyzing. Like AJ, for example, he's an overthinker. And sometimes being a bit of a dumbass can actually serve you, because you just don't think, you just do. And you're like, these dynamics don't really get to you. But I don't know. I'm just kind of putting the possibilities out there. I think regardless, I just don't think Daniel Dubois is good enough to beat Anthony Joshua. I give him a puncher's chance, and a pretty decent puncher's chance. I certainly don't think AJ can take a full-blooded Daniel Dubois punch, be it a left hook or a right hand. But I don't think it's going to come to that, really. I think AJ just has too much experience, and stylistically, I think Daniel Dubois, I think his bubble is going to be burst come September 21st, I believe. But nevertheless, that is just my take on this episode. As I say, I think this was actually a decent watch. It was kind of mildly amusing, mildly entertaining. So check it out. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Maybe get some early predictions. What do you think? But also touching on the psychological dynamic or potential psychological dynamic at play. Do you think it's of any real significance? Leave it down below and I'll get back to you for now. Thanks for listening and I'll catch you in the next video.